He gripped her collar like he owned her. Laughter rippled across the courtyard, mocking, sharp, the kind that cut deeper than a fist. Dozens of students in red and white varsity jackets surrounded them, phones already aimed, screens blinking, like waiting vultures. Nerea Vale didn't flinch, she didn't blink, she didn't look away. The boy in front of her, Caden Roth, smirked like the whole world belonged to him. And here she was, some transfer girl from nowhere, standing too straight, breathing too calm, refusing to shrink like he expected. "Know your place," he said, his voice low and theatrical, made for the cameras. "Before I put you there." His fist tightened on her collar, pulling her closer. She could smell the cologne he probably drowned himself in before every game, could feel the eyes of every onlooker like heat on her skin. Her skirt rippled slightly in the breeze, the only thing that moved on her. Not her feet, not her voice, not her expression. "You have 3 seconds to let go," she said quietly. Caden scoffed. "Or what? You'll cry?" 1. A ripple of amused murmurs passed through the crowd. 2. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't square her shoulders. She didn't give them what they were waiting for. Instead, she looked into his eyes, deeply, steadily, and let the silence stretch like a pulled wire. 3. Time didn't snap. It shifted. She moved. Nobody saw exactly how. All they knew was that one moment Caden was gripping her, and the next he was on the ground, his wrist twisted back, elbow locked, shoulder nearly dislocated. Nerea stood over him, not angry, not flustered, just still. Her breath even. Her stance centered. He writhed, mouth open in confusion more than pain. "What? How the hell?" "I warned you," she murmured. Phones were no longer recording to mock her. Now they trembled in hands that had just learned what fear, disguised as entitlement, looked like when it cracked. No one moved. She looked around slowly, her gaze meeting theirs. Every boy who laughed, every girl who stared, every teacher pretending not to see. Her eyes landed on one face in the back, his eyes not mocking, not amused, just watching. Always watching. Riven. She let Caden go. He scrambled back like he'd touched fire, red-faced and choking on his own breath. "You're crazy," he snapped, though his voice shook too hard to make it convincing. Nerea adjusted her collar with the same care a queen might straighten her crown. "I asked you to let go," she said simply. And then, like nothing had happened, she walked away, past the shocked stares, past the mouths hung open, past the laughter that had frozen mid-breath. Her heels clicked softly against the courtyard stones, steady as a ticking clock. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Because, in that moment, without a single scream or a broken bone, she'd changed the air around her. The rules, the fear, the power, and every single person watching knew. That girl was dangerous in the way that silence is before a storm. The clip hit the school's group chat before the lunch bell rang. It was entitled "Psycho New Girl" or "Angry Black. Chick loses it," like they might have once labeled her. No, the caption read, "She said 3 seconds. He didn't listen." And by the end of the day, no one dared call her a nobody again. The first time Nerea stepped onto Halworth Prep's campus, it smelled like rain-soaked stone and expensive perfume. Not hers, never hers. The iron gates hissed shut behind her, like a verdict. Marble steps, stained glass windows, blazers too crisp to be real. Everything about the place whispered money and generations. Her skirt was a little faded. Her shoes worn at the edges. The bracelet on her wrist, a simple leather cord tied in a knot, was the only thing she wore that meant anything. No one greeted her. No one offered help. Just glances, quick, clipped, dissecting. She found her homeroom by memory, not signs. The teacher, a man with soft hands and a colder voice, didn't even look up when she walked in. "Name?" he asked, already bored. "Nerea Vale." He skimmed his roster. "Ah, the transfer." His pause didn't go unnoticed. The classroom fell quiet for 2 seconds too long. "You can take the empty seat by the window," he added. She did. Outside, the clouds hung heavy, like they didn't belong here either. It didn't take long to learn the rules. At Hallworth, status wasn't earned. It was inherited. You didn't climb here. You belonged here, or you didn't. There were no in-betweens. She watched it unfold in the cafeteria, where every table told a story. Athletes in red and white. Theater kids with too much eyeliner and too much voice. The money crowd. Birkin bags, Rolex watches worn like friendship bracelets. Everyone belonged somewhere except her. Her first week, she sat at different tables each day, testing the silence. No one said no. They just leaned away, shifted slightly, made the air around her heavy, uninviting. And then there was him. Riven. Darrow didn't belong here either, but no one ever said it. His hair always a little messy, his tie never quite straight. He sketched in the margins of textbooks, always weapons. Blades, staffs, gauntlets, like pieces of armor built from imagination. His locker was next to hers, but he never spoke. Not at first. It happened in fragments. The third day, he held the door open for her when her hands were full. The fifth, he offered her a charger in chemistry without a word. The seventh, their eyes met during a fire drill. She had her arms crossed, standing alone. He had his back to a wall, pencil tucked behind one ear. For a second, no one else existed. They didn't speak until day 11. It was raining. Hard. She stood outside the library doors, watching the sky like it had something to answer for. He stepped beside her, his hoodie already soaked through. "You don't run for cover?" she asked, voice dry. "I like the sound it makes when it hits the stone," he said. She looked at him. For once, he was the one not looking away. "You talk," she noted. He smirked. "Sometimes." That was the first time she smiled since arriving. After that, it was like they existed in parentheses. Quiet moments at the edge of noise. A shared glance when someone made a too loud joke. A pen passed back without asking. A half smile, never fully born. One day, as they waited outside the gym, she noticed the scratch across his cheekbone. "What happened?" she asked. "Ran into someone's ego," he said. She almost laughed, but it twisted in her chest, because she recognized the bruise on his soul. It matched hers. After school, he caught up to her in the hall. No crowd, no cameras, just them. "You okay here?" he asked. Not like most people ask it, not like it was small talk. She paused, then nodded slowly. "I'm used to being the shadow in the corner." "You don't seem like a shadow." "What do I seem like?" He hesitated. "Like someone who could break a person in half without blinking." She arched a brow. "And you're not scared?" He smiled, slow, deliberate. "Should I be?" That moment hung in the air, not heavy, electric. His eyes dipped, just briefly, to the base of her throat, where her collarbone peeked from her shirt's fold. Her skin heated, not from embarrassment, from something older, deeper, something waiting. "Depends," she whispered. "Do you intend to grab my collar too?" He blinked, breath caught, heartbeat showing in his neck. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not stupid," she smiled. This time it reached her eyes, and for the first time the school felt just a little less cold. They didn't need to kiss, to know what was building between them. It lived in the spaces between words, in the way Riven looked at her like he was always trying to read a language only she spoke. It thrived in silence, in moments when his fingers brushed hers under a shared book, when her shoulder touched his for one heartbeat too long during a lab experiment, and neither of them moved away. Nerea didn't trust easily. Not boys, not smiles, not softness, not after what life had taught her. But Riven, he never asked for pieces of her. He just waited, patient and still, like someone who knew the value of things people threw away. The bullying didn't stop. If anything, it sharpened. A girl named Adlin, high cheekbones and high heels, accidentally spilled orange juice on Nerea's chair before class. Caden bumped into her in the hall just hard enough to send her books scattering across the floor. And always the laughter, always the stares. She stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria, started keeping tissues in her pocket to dab out the bruises before they spread, but she never let them see her crack. Only once did she slip. It was after a chemistry quiz, the one she'd aced again. The teacher had raised an eyebrow and muttered, "Impressive, for someone from your background." The whole class had gone still. No one said a word. No one ever did. She walked straight out the back door after the bell rang, down the side hallway where the janitor's cart always sat. That's where Riven found her, back against the wall, fists clenched, breathing like she was holding in a scream. He didn't say anything at first, just slid down beside her and sat, legs stretched out, head tilted toward the ceiling. "I used to think if I stayed quiet, they'd stop," he said finally. "That if I acted small enough, they'd forget I existed." She turned her head toward him, jaw tight. "Did it work?" "No," she exhaled, a half laugh, half sigh. "I'm not afraid of them," she whispered. "I'm afraid of what I'll do to them if I stop pretending I'm soft." He looked at her, not like a boy, like a mirror. "Then maybe don't pretend," he said. The hallway buzzed with silence, his fingers inched toward hers on the floor. Barely touching. A brush. A promise. She didn't move away. That night, she went to the old warehouse, the one on Ashcroft, lane with the boarded windows and the rusted door that groaned when she opened it. Her grandfather's dojo, once full of students, now empty but not dead. Dust danced in moonlight. The mats were still there, worn and scarred like skin that had survived something. She stood in the center of the room, breath steady, and untied the cord bracelet from her wrist, laid it on the ground like an offering. Then she moved. Each kata, each shift, block, strike, was a memory stitched into her muscles. Her feet whispered over the mat. Her arms cut through air like silk. The anger didn't vanish, but it shaped itself, became something she could hold. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her skull. "You are not made to destroy. You are made to protect, especially yourself." When she finished, sweat trickled down her spine. Her chest rose and fell in clean, even breaths. She looked into the cracked mirror across the room. Her reflection stared back. Braids wild, shirt clinging to her, eyes sharper than blades. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like prey. She felt like the warning before the strike. She stayed there, kneeling in the quiet, until her legs ached. Before she left, she tied the cord, bracelet, back around her wrist, but this time tighter, not as a reminder of what had been taken, but of what she still carried. The next morning, when Caden smirked at her across the lockers, she didn't flinch, didn't look away. And when Riven passed her a folded note during literature, his fingers, lingering just a second too long on hers, she felt heat crawl up her neck. The note only said one thing: "Tell me where you go when it hurts." She didn't answer out loud, but she let her hand rest on his knee beneath the desk, just long enough for him to know. When it hurts, I become something they won't survive. The storm had been building for weeks, not in the sky, but in her chest, in her blood, under her skin. It lived in the way teachers looked away when Caden accidentally tripped her in the hallway, in how Adlin's laughter followed her like perfume laced with poison, in the way the faculty praised the rich boys for breathing and punished Nerea for standing still. It lived in the bruises she no longer bothered to hide. And still, she hadn't let it out. She kept going to class. She kept sitting straight. She kept her voice calm. Her rage wore a mask of perfect control, passed down from her grandfather like an heirloom. But something changed the day they touched Riven. It was a Tuesday, overcast, and too still. The cafeteria buzzed with idle cruelty. Nerea sat alone near the window, flipping through a worn notebook filled with kata diagrams and half-finished poems. Riven was at the next table, sketching a short comic panel. A girl who looked vaguely like her, surrounded by shadow creatures she kicked into dust. They were almost smiling at each other when it happened. A spoonful of mashed potatoes flew through the air and splattered across Riven's sketchbook. The laughter came next. Chad, a broad-shouldered lacrosse player with empty eyes, smirked and said, "Oops, my hand slipped." Riven went still. Nerea watched him, watched the way his fingers curled into fists over the page, smearing the ink. Chad leaned over the table, voice low and cruel. "I didn't know charity cases drew cartoons. Maybe you should try stick figures. Less disappointing." "Back off," Riven said. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. Chad's face shifted. "What did you say, freak?" Riven stood, slowly, carefully. "I said back. Off." And then Nerea was on her feet too. She stepped between them, hand gently resting on Riven's chest, not to stop him, but to hold something in place. Her voice, when it came, was a blade wrapped in silk. "Don't," she whispered to him. "This is what they want." He looked down at her, jaw tight, hands trembling. "You shouldn't have to take this," he muttered. "No," she said, "but I will, until it's time not to." Later that night, she returned to the warehouse dojo. It had started raining, again. Thunder rolled like a warning in the sky. She lit the single candle near the old altar, its flicker casting jagged shadows against the peeling walls. The mats smelled like dust and memory. She wore her black G this time. Not the uniform of the school, but the one that still carried her grandfather's scent, as faint as breath. She bowed low to his faded photograph on the wall. Her fingers brushed the frame. "I'm close, grandfather," she whispered, "but I don't know if I'm strong enough to wait." Her voice cracked on the last word. She moved, not with elegance, but with fury. Each strike thundered against the air. Each step hit the mat like a war drum. She moved faster than usual, sloppier. Not because she had forgotten, but because the control was slipping. Because control didn't stop pain. It just delayed it. And tonight, the delay ended. She landed in a crouch, breath shaking, hair clinging to her forehead. Her vision blurred. The candle had burned low. She crawled to the shrine, opened the wooden box beneath it, and found what she hadn't touched in 2 years. Her grandfather's original black belt, the one he'd worn when he opened. The dojo, faded, frayed, but still knotted with every lesson she carried in her blood. She picked it up, hands trembling, and tied it around her waist, over her GI, tight and final. Not to show off, not to fight, to remember who she was before. The school tried to shrink her, before their silence became her prison. When she rose, she didn't feel angry anymore. She felt ready, and as the rain poured down around the old dojo, thunder rattling the cracked windows, she stood alone in the dark and whispered the promise aloud. When the moment comes, I won't hold back. They set the stage like cowards, smiles sharp, cameras ready, timing perfect. It happened during Friday's school assembly. The whole student body was crammed into the glass-ceiling atrium where the sun poured down like judgment. Principal Merrow droned on about community values and integrity, while the elite students slouched in the front row, legs stretched, smirks prepared. Nerea sat near the back, beside Riven. She hadn't spoken much that morning, just quiet nods. But her stillness was different now, not hiding, not numb, coiled. When the principal opened the floor for announcements, Caden stood. Of course, perfect blazer, perfect hair, perfect lie. Quick reminder, he said, addressing the sea of students with the confidence of someone who'd never faced consequence. Fall Festival Planning Committee meets after school. Then he turned, right toward Nerea. Oh, and remember, he added, voice dipping with fake charm, let's all try to keep our emotions in check this year. We don't want anyone snapping again, right? A few chuckles rose. Riven tensed. Beside her. She didn't react. Not visibly. But inside, the count had begun. 1, 2, 3. By the time the bell rang and students spilled into the courtyard, the clip of Caden's joke had already started spreading. It had a name. Angry. Nerea. Carefully edited footage. Her eyes mid-blink, her posture caught in tension, her silence turned sinister by clever cuts. They'd been filming her for weeks, every twitch, every moment of quiet rage, without her knowing. That was their trap. But they made one mistake. They touched her. She was halfway across the courtyard when she saw them waiting. Caden, Chad, Adlin, clustered near the fountain with too many eyes on them. Students forming a circle like a ritual had begun. Phones already up. Riven called out, Nerea, don't... She kept walking, because this time it wasn't about what they wanted. It was about what she had decided. Caden stepped forward, blocking her path. Leaving so soon, he mocked. She tried to walk around him. He moved with her. I'm not done talking. I am. He grabbed her collar, the same way he had in the thumbnail of her story, the same way he thought power worked, by taking, without asking. Time slowed. Again, that smell of expensive cologne. His breath too close, his grip too hard. You really don't learn, do you? she whispered. He sneered, tightening his hold. You're not scary. She didn't answer. She moved. His wrist bent back in a blink. Pop. His knee buckled as her leg swept behind his. He hit the ground with a dull crack, his body folded under her perfect control. But she didn't strike. She didn't scream. She pressed, her hand to his chest, pinning him just hard enough to let him feel how easily she could have hurt him. Her eyes locked onto his. You grabbed me, she said, voice like broken glass wrapped in velvet. Now remember how it felt. She stood. Phones captured every second. But this time, they didn't edit anything. Caden gasped on the ground, humiliated. Chad started forward, fists clenched, until her gaze snapped to him. One look. He stopped. Adlin shrank back behind him, and in that moment, the whole school felt the truth like a slap. She hadn't snapped. She had chosen. Silence fell, thick and electrified. She turned and walked, heels clicking on stone, collar untouched. Someone whispered, She's trained. Another voice. She warned him, but Nerea heard only the steady rhythm of her own breath, the kind of peace that doesn't come from silence, but from reclaiming your own voice after it's been buried beneath everyone else's noise. By the time she reached the steps, Riven was there. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He held out her backpack, slipped from her shoulder during the takedown. Their fingers brushed. She looked into his eyes and found something fierce there. Not fear, pride. She took the bag, slipped it on, kept walking. And behind her, the silence broke. Not into laughter, not into jeers, into applause, scattered, then stronger. They suspended her the next morning. The email arrived just before sunrise. Formal language, cold punctuation. Pending investigation into the recent altercation. No mention of her collar being grabbed. No acknowledgement of restraint, of grace, of everything she didn't do. Just one line. You are temporarily removed from Hallworth Academy grounds. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She read the email in silence, dressed in silence, and walked out of her house like she wasn't, carrying the weight of an entire system on her shoulders. Outside, the sky was still half asleep, bruised purple with morning light. The world hadn't seen the footage yet, but it would. Someone had posted the raw video minutes after it happened. No edits, no cuts. Just 3 moves. One breath. One girl standing over a golden boy who had finally been silenced. By the time she reached the edge of the city, the clip had over 100,000 views. By noon, she was trending. And by evening, there were reporters outside her house. But Nerea didn't stay home. She went to the dojo. The warehouse doors creaked open like they were exhaling for her. Inside, the silence wrapped around her like a second skin. She lit a single candle and pulled her grandfather's black belt from its place on the altar. Then she moved. Slow at first. Each motion deliberate. Her body remembered what her heart was still catching up to. The fight wasn't over. When she finally stopped, sweat clinging to her back, rain started tapping against the windows. A soft knock echoed across the room. Riven stood there. Hoodie, drenched, hair clinging to his face. They suspended you, he said. She nodded. They're trying to paint you as a threat. I know. They're scared. Good. He stepped forward, slow, like she might vanish if he moved too fast. Is this where you come when you don't want to be found? He asked. It's where I remember who I am. He glanced around. It feels like you built this from stone and memory. She tilted her head. Maybe I did. He reached out, brushing her wrist where the black cord was still tied. You don't have to hold this alone. I'm not afraid to. I know. But I'd still rather carry part of it. She looked at him. Really looked. This boy who saw through armor, who never asked her to be soft, but offered softness anyway. He didn't kiss her like a movie scene. He kissed her like a question he already knew the answer to. Her hands found. His collar, not to defend, not to threaten, but to pull. His lips tasted like rain and breathlessness. Her back pressed against the wooden wall, his palm resting over her heart like he was afraid it might shatter. She didn't flinch, didn't tremble. She let him feel the rhythm of it. Fast, controlled, real. He pulled back first, eyes burning with something deeper than desire. You're not broken, Nerea. No, she whispered. But I'm tired of being bent. His forehead rested against hers, breath mingling with hers in the candlelit dark. Then, let's straighten the world. Together. The next day, the video crossed 2 million views. Martial arts pages reposted it with captions like, "Discipline, not rage." Social activists shared it as "Silence no more." Parents debated it. Teachers ignored it. The school tried to scrub it, but the truth was out, and truth doesn't go away. Riven stood by her side through it all. When the media asked for interviews, he said nothing. When her name became a hashtag, he turned off her phone. When her hands shook, just a little, in private, he laced his fingers with hers until they stilled. They didn't need promises. They had presence. 1 week later, Nerea stood in the dojo with a printed letter in her hand. Hallworth Academy had lifted her suspension, but she wasn't going back the same girl. This time, when she walked into those halls, her black belt stayed, under her blazer, like a quiet crown. People stared, whispered, avoided, admired. She didn't care. The boy who once grabbed her collar didn't even look up when she passed. He didn't need to. She had already reminded him where his place was, and now she was walking her own path. No permission required.